Good evening. I'm going to call the October 5th, 2021 school committee to order. Just for the record, want to note that Chairperson Rob Canfield is not here tonight. I, as Vice Chair, will stand in and do my best not to be awkward. So we'll start with open public comment, please. And before we begin with that, I'll reiterate some of the reminders that Mr. Canfield said last time, which is we're going to try to keep every commenter to 5 minutes, and I'll kind of put my hand up to give you a 1 minute warning, and then I'll put my hand up again once you're getting close to that last minute, just to give you a heads up. And then we also want to make sure that we maintain an air of civility and listen to each other. And I'll remind school committee that our role in this is to take in all that feedback and process it between now and our next meeting and respond to people in good time. So with that, I'll say thank you. And who would like to, oh, sorry. For folks who do want to speak, right at the door there's a sign-in. And just so you know, we actually do put your name into the minutes just for the record. And it's important, I think, for the community and really for us. So, who would like to go? Oh, microphone?
You have to go to the mics.
And oh yeah, when you come up and talk, please do come forward and sit at the mics, so folks at home can hear it.
Do you want the sheet?
Has everybody got a chance to fill out on the sheet if you want to? Yeah, thanks. Do you mind if I grab that?
I'll get it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Pirates. Now, folks, I was just planning on going in order unless you all decide you want to work it out differently amongst yourselves. But first up, Ms. Shelby Kornbluth of 20 Lawton Lane. Welcome, Ms. Kornbluth.
Good evening, Shelby Kornbluth, 20 Lawton Lane. So during the last school committee meeting, I provided documented evidence on the lack of efficacy on using face masks for the prevention of COVID-19. I also provided evidence of the detrimental side effects on face masks on our children. In all of these interactions, some of you have looked at me like I'm an uneducated fool. I have to tell you it's quite the opposite. I have a master's degree in engineering and have spent over 25 years developing medical devices as an engineer to now where I'm the vice president of research and development. If I make a mistake analyzing data or reviewing the data, I really can kill someone. My decisions have really impactful, have a real impact on patients and their patient safety. So at the conclusion of my comments, I asked the school committee to fight DESE on behalf of our children. I just wanted to update you that Abington and Sandwich have actually done this and are fighting against the mask mandate. Norton has already voted to make masks in school parental choice once the mandate is lifted. This is the type of representation we are looking from all of you. Remember, if the mandate is lifted and you vote to lift it in Foxborough as well, we are not saying no to masks. We are simply saying it's parents' choice. So my first question of the night is, what will it take for all of you to fight DESE on our behalf of our children and our choice? So I know that you'll not answer that question tonight, but I think it's really important for us to understand that. Okay. The second item I'd like to bring up is that I've made several inquiries to the school committee through the community inbox and through this meeting with minimal to no response. My first set of questions was submitted through the community inbox on September 13th and then reiterated during the community input section of this meeting on September 21st regarding the effectiveness of face masks. We received a response on September 27th. However, it did not adequately address our questions. Specifically, we asked for peer-reviewed randomized control trial on the effectiveness of masks. The school committee, as well as your pediatrician, regurgitated the studies on the CDC website. None of these studies are control trials, so they were not able to make any comparison between a masked and unmasked population. Additionally, all of the data in those trials were at time periods where COVID was on the decline everywhere, regardless of mask usage. The school committee also did not provide evidence that a certified industrial hygienist either created or reviewed the school's COVID policies, and also provided incomplete response to engineering controls. I'd love to have a larger conversation about either of these topics and what can be done to improve the Foxborough Public Schools. Another submission to the community inbox I made in advance of the September 21st school committee meeting was in regards to the lack of teaching the Constitution on Constitution Day, September 17th, as required by federal law for all public schools that accept federal funds. I asked for corrective action, and I still have not received a response. Finally, during the September 21st school committee meeting, I asked what actions would be done to close the massive learning gap experienced due to COVID, as demonstrated in the significant drop in MCAS scores from 2019 to 2021. It was actually quite disappointing during the review of the superintendent's goals for the year to see that not a single goal had anything to do with improved outcomes or learning at the school. The single student learning goal was around analyzing culture and climate data and attending workshops and sessions. The 2 district improvement goals were around developing a 4-year plan for success in COVID. Unfortunately, many of the kids impacted by the learning gap will be long gone before the 4-year plan for success is completed and implemented. I want to know what you're doing to address this massive gap now. Our kids have been harmed by this. In closing, can you please let me know if this is the proper channel for these inquiries and when I can expect answers? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as I said, is this the proper channel for these inquiries? And when can we expect answers to these questions?
In reference to that, yeah.
In reference to anything, everything. We've had several questions and either inadequate responses or no responses. And, what's the point of submitting information to a community inbox if it goes into a black hole? Because that's really what it feels like.
Okay. I believe the attempt was made to respond to the questions in the communique that you referenced, and then we received a response from you on
Several other people, yes.
2 other people,
Yes.
yes. And so I would look within the week to have a response to that as well for you.
And I'd like to
on
understand.
those points
And
that
I'd
you
also
brought
like to
up here
understand,
tonight.
what type of a plan is going to be put in place to close these learning gaps? Like, everyone says that these kids weren't affected, but the scores demonstrate that. And the English scores weren't so bad, but the math scores were horrible. I mean, it's extremely disappointing. There was one grade where it was like almost 25 points or 25%. I mean, that's significant. And I just think it's, especially in math. Coming from me, math to me is so important, and I struggle with my own kids and having to teach them math at home. But it's really, something that I think that we need to make sure we have the right priorities in the schools, because those types of results are extremely disappointing.
I'll refer you to the superintendent's update from last meeting, wherein a lot of those plans were discussed, and we discussed them in context of the school district's goals, but that can be reiterated moving forward.
Yeah, so I did read the school district's goals, and I didn't grasp that in the goals. I've read a lot of goals and objectives, and I've written a lot of goals and objectives, and I didn't see anything like measurable there. Like, I didn't see any measurable goals to talking about learning and student improvement in those areas. So, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
So, okay.
Next up, we have Ms. Jamie Kelly.
Thank you. I'm Jamie Kelly, 9 Connie Drive. So, dear members of the school committee, my name is Jamie Kelly, and I'm here today to talk to you about the current bus policy that negatively affects my children and their ability to get to and from school each day. I have a son that is a freshman at the high school and a son who is in 6th grade at the Ahern. I was made aware of the policy, one that states that children can only take the bus from one household, and I understand it was put in place for the safety of all children using this form of transportation to get to and from school. However, I have a really hard time with the policy being put in place without the opportunity for exceptions to be made for families like mine. My children's father and I are divorced, but both reside here in Foxborough. We have joint custody, and our boys live with each of us 50% of the time. We are 2 hardworking parents who work full-time and have to be at our jobs before the time we can get our kids or drop our kids off at their schools. This makes it impossible, and I mean impossible, for us to get them to school into our jobs on time when the policy states that children can only take the bus from one household. I'm not here today to ask the policy to be removed. I'm simply asking for an amendment to be made in order for my children to take the bus to and from both households where they reside. They live in 2 places in this town. I am by no means asking for new bus stops to be created for my children or for my children to have unlimited opportunities to take whatever bus they want to. What is referred to as an open bus policy, as Mr. Yukner referred to when he responded to me. I am simply asking for my children to have the opportunity to take two different buses. The one that they will take to and from their fathers when they're at their father's house, and one they'll take to and from my house when they're with me. I appreciate, and believe me, I'm in education, I appreciate that this policy was put in place for the safety of all children. However, this request doesn't change the safety that is being provided for my children. At 15 years old and 12 years old, they are fully aware of where they are going and what bus they need to take each day. We aren't talking about 5-year-old kindergarten students who could forget where they are going and what bus they need to take each day. There is a schedule that I have created for our boys, and they've been following it for years. I'm happy to provide that schedule to the bus drivers, either by month or for the year if necessary, so they know when my children will be taking each bus. I have always provided the schedule my boys have had for their teachers, so this is easy for me to do so. I could even provide a note daily if that is what it takes for my boys to take 2 buses. All this being said, I strongly feel, and I truly strongly feel, this policy discriminates against divorced families and punishes my sons because of a situation we, as their parents, put them in. They deserve the same opportunities to take the bus to and from the 2 places they live and not be limited by such a policy. Again, taking the same 2 buses to and from the 2 places they live doesn't make it unsafe for them, and we as their parents are completely confident that they will get to where they need to each day, and that is on us. This is what needs to happen so they can get to and from school, and we can get to our jobs at the time that we've been instructed to without having to drive our children to school. I am not asking for them to take several different buses on all different days to all different places. Today it's going to be uptown, tomorrow it's going to be the Y, the next day it might be to a friend's house. It's simpler than that, and I think I've made that quite clear here. I see no reason as to why we can't be accommodated and the policy be amended. Not changed, not removed, but amended. When I've addressed that my boys can still be safe. That's the only word I've heard. It's for the safety of all kids. Kids need to be safe. This one was dropped off at the Y, or at their house, and they were supposed to go to the Y. I don't need that. They need to go from one house and then to the next house. 2 different buses, not an open bus policy. So not changed, not removed, when I've addressed that my boys can still be safe. The number 1 reason I was told why the policy was made in the first place. So I appreciate your attention to this very important and sensitive matter that I feel very passionate about. I look forward to your understanding and work towards amending this policy to help families like mine. A situation we created for my kids, not something they asked for or chose themselves. Just trying to get to and from school on the bus so I can get to work on time, and their father can too. It's that simple. And I appreciate the safety. I teach for a living. I get it. That's part of my job, to keep kids safe every day. Besides 2 + 2, 8 - 4. And what's a noun? Just getting them to school so I can get to work and provide for them. 2 houses, 2 buses, the same 2 buses. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Jen.
Schroeder, can I have a copy of that for the record,
Yep.
please?
Yes, oh, yeah, if
And also
folks
would-
did bring copies of things that they're reading, we love to have
be
that for
great.
the record.
And I think Shelley has something too.
Just so you know, I know I'm not the only family this affects. I'm just the only one fighting for it, and people can scramble and have friends help. I don't have that luxury. So it's only up to me and their father to get them to school, and I'm not able to do it without taking the bus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, who does this go to?
And then,
Janet.
to
Janet.
Janet there. And,
Janet there.
Ms. Kornbluth, if you happen to have the thing with you,
Thank
otherwise I
you,
know
thank you.
we can take it afterwards electronically. No, thank you. That's all. And then, Ms. Kelly, I believe that there's an item related to that policy on tonight's agenda later. Next, Mr. Wyatt Peterson.
How you doing? I'm Wyatt Peterson,
Wyatt.
5 Garfield Street. I want to talk about the mask mandate. I'm not going to bother citing any data or studies tonight. We've already done that, and there's no point in doing it again. Instead, I want to make a basic appeal to reason. You know what's being done to our children is senseless and wrong, but nobody's speaking up about it. On August 20th, Education Commissioner Jeffrey Riley stated that, quote, "The purpose of the mask policy is to encourage higher vaccination rates among students." In a statement, he quoted Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, who said essentially the exact same thing. The conclusion is inescapable. The mask is being wielded as a weapon of coercion. Yet we're still being asked to accept that this has something to do with public health. It doesn't. I know it, and so do all of you. But you refuse to stick your necks out and do what's right, and that's what's most upsetting. We understand there's a mandate in place, but that doesn't mean you can't use your platform to make some noise about this issue. Speak up on our behalf. That's part of the gig. You are elected to represent our views and values too, and let me tell you, there are many more who feel the same way that we do. At the last meeting and in email exchanges, you tried to justify the policy by saying, it's just one extra layer of protection, even if it's not that effective, what's the harm? Why not wear a mask? Etc., right? Such a position insinuates there are no downsides. As myself and others have already shown, there are downsides, and they far outweigh any potential benefits. For this reason, masks need to be optional. In no way is this policy conveying the principles of critical thinking to our children. Instead, they're being taught to blindly accept corporate and political dictate, no matter how irrational. You should be setting a better example. Don't wait for the Jeffrey Rileys of the world to do the right thing. You'll be waiting forever. Upton Sinclair said it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it. So I urge you all not to be shirkers. Don't shirk your responsibilities. Just following orders is the pitiful whimper of so many who have turned a blind eye to injustice. Your responsibilities are not to Jeffrey Riley or Karen Polito or Charlie Baker. They are to us and our children. Do right by us and by them. Stand up and stick your necks out. Speak up. Lead by example. Be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Ms. Julie Curry?
Oh, you're ready? Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
Julie Curry, 55 Cross Street. The school is trying to make us submit forms for our students that we cannot answer in an honest manner. And they're threatening to take away students' internet privileges and more if we don't comply by October 13th. I'm talking about the student information update that's due next week. Myself and others cannot complete this paperwork because we do not agree with the mask policy. The question states, I have read and agreed to the terms of this policy. And the only option is to agree. There's no place to disagree, and you cannot submit the paperwork without completing this section. And now people are getting emails that if we don't submit this information, kids will lose their ability to use the internet at school, and some will lose their senior privileges, depending on grade. It seems to get worse the older you get. Taking away internet privileges is prohibiting students and their ability to submit their homework because many assignments are online. Those of us who disagree and have children in the Foxborough public school system are complying, even though we disagree. But what's the point of asking a question if we don't have a choice in answering it? Maybe you should change the wording to, I have read the policy, or perhaps disagree yet complying. But it doesn't seem fair that our children will have their privileges taken away because we cannot honestly complete the school forms. Like, it doesn't make any sense. There's only one choice, agree. And if you don't agree, you can't submit it. So my kid won't be able to use the internet with her class or his class because I can't give my honest opinion in a survey that you guys put out. I'd also like to know why there have been no parent surveys for what level parents' levels of comfort are. Last year we had several surveys, like 3 feet, 6 feet. What are you most comfortable with? There was a lot of back and forth, and there was a lot of surveys sent out. We haven't seen one this year. Wouldn't it be a great place to start to gauge parents' comfort level moving forward? I feel like that would be a great placeholder for once the DESE mandate ends. And speaking of mandates ending, I know Shelby had also mentioned that Norton voted to end the mandate for masks once the DESE mandate expires. So why can't we do the same? And I'm also not saying get rid of masks for everybody. Just make it a parent's choice. If a parent feels strongly about it, by all means, put a mask on your kid. But for some of us, we just want a choice. We want to feel like we have the freedom. I don't think any of us are surprised that the DESE extended their mandate. This is 2 weeks to flatten the curve all over again. We're going to keep on going and going and going until we say enough. And I urge you to take time to look at the schools around the country and even locally that are not requiring masks. There are local private schools that are not requiring masks, and they are doing awesome. There is no increased COVID transmission. Like, please, I can give you the information for these schools if you are interested. It's kind of amazing that these schools are doing awesome, and there's no mandate. This summer, the students, as I mentioned before, Foxborough public school camps, indoors, kids sitting side by side, no masks, and it was great. I just wish we could at least give it a shot because the summer was awesome. My kids loved it, and then it just seems kind of sad when you see sporting events and you see all these other, like the Met Gala, all these other big events going on, no masks. Stadiums are packed, but then there's kids sitting with masks on in school. It doesn't make sense. All we want is for our kids to breathe fresh air. Dr. Burdos, you read an opinion letter from one doctor, one local doctor, voicing a one-sided argument. You have yet to read a letter with a different opinion from your own. If I find a physician who writes a letter opposing masks, would you read that out loud? Because many doctors and nurses are speaking against this, yet you pretend that it's not happening. You would rather ignore us and hope that we go away, but we're not going away. You are filtering what letters are being read to the town, just like you filtered what you told parents at the virtual back-to-school meeting. You talked about what school would look like with masks on students before the school committee even voted or before DESE even had a mask mandate. You did not mention the school committee meeting or that parents could attend or that there's a vote or the potential to have a mask-free school year. Because this meeting happened before you guys voted, and then DESE swooped in that same day and made the mandate. But I had a hell of a time trying to find out when you guys even meet. I had no idea. I had to reach out to Rob Canfield to find out when are these meetings, because it wasn't put online. Anyway, I'll wrap it up.
Thanks.
You guys didn't offer a parent survey, and it appears you don't want other people to know the other side of the story. You're taking your position of authority and filtering what is shared with parents. How is that fair? The reason we feel that we are not being heard is because we are not getting any feedback from you. You don't respond to our concerns, comments, or our emails. Why don't you offer parent questionnaires? Why don't you update student information forms so we can answer it honestly? Simple things like this would make us feel like you were listening. We continue to come to these school committee meetings to raise our concerns, and we don't receive any responses, either during these meetings or in the following meetings. Not everyone feels comfortable attending these meetings and putting themselves out there publicly, but I promise you there are a lot more of us than that you see here in this room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask for that statement as well?
Yes, sorry about that, yes. If you're comfortable sharing it, we'd love to have it, or a copy of it. Lovely. Dennis, and is it Grove? Joe. Mr. Dennis Joe, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Gove. I live at 40 Beach Street in Foxborough.
Thank you.
I just wanted to come here tonight to thank you for consistently adhering to CDC and state guidelines regarding mask mandate and mask usage in schools. Masks in schools absolutely protect students, faculty, and staff. It's backed up by plenty of science. It is backed up by middle school level science. So thank you for following those guidelines. And please know that there are plenty of folks in town who support your decisions, even if they're not able to come here and say so. On a separate issue, I did not get this woman's name who's asking for the exception to the bus policy. I support that. I think exceptions should be allowed in situations like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Joe Pires. Joe, did I say your name right that time?
What's that?
Joe Pires, right?
Yes, you did. Yeah,
Thank
that's,
you.
That's right. Yeah. Excuse me here. Joe Pires, South Grove Street. I guess before I want to talk about the mask mandate, but before I get going, this woman behind me with the bus situation. First day of school this year, my daughter got on the wrong bus. As a parent, you know, having the bus roll up to your house and no kids on it, and then scrambling trying to find out where she is, you know, is a little disheartening. Although I knew everything was fine because I trust my daughter and I know that nothing really truly bad happened. But just as an FYI, that does happen, and I think you should make an exception for the woman behind me who's got some bus challenges. But really, I have 2 points tonight to make, and it's really based around fear. My daughter came home the other day and told me, every time I come here, I feel like I have a daughter story. She's 6 years old, she's in the first grade. She told me that a student of hers said that if we don't wear masks, they're gonna die. You know, and I'm like, well, do you believe that? I asked her. And she says, no. And I said, well, why? And she knows why, because we literally do everything without a mask. She does extracurricular activities without a mask. We go shopping without a mask. We go, you know, to the stores without a mask. We do everything without a mask except go to school. So she comes home and tells me that. And, you know, the fear pump that goes on from parents. So my first appeal is to parents. I guess be careful what you're telling your children. Your children aren't gonna die from not wearing a mask. And those children are now, you know, somewhat souring the minds of other children and putting some kind of thought in their head like, wow, we could die. They're 6 years old. I don't even know if they know what that death really means. So, you know, and we know where this mask mandate is leading, or the mask mandate, where it's all headed, right? There's going to be a big, big push by the media, local media, national media for vaccines for kids under 12 years old. So I'm getting out in front of it right now and saying I'm going to put up a big brick wall between you guys and my daughter of jabbing her arm with something that's completely unknown, that has no long-term testing. So the first time I came here, I told you guys to lead and not follow. And I'm hoping you guys can get out in front of this one because we all know it's coming. And there's a lot of people, parents who decided to get the vaccine and they're not gonna subject their kids to this. So all the pressures you feel from the state, from the national media, all that, stick your neck out. Just like Wyatt said, you gotta start sticking your neck out here and start advocating for our kids, right? The writing is on the wall, it's coming. And there's no way in hell I'd ever do that to my daughter. If other parents wanna do it, that should be their choice. Going back to parent choice, I think you need to go back and do surveys. You need to start polling the parents in the town. I think you'll be surprised. Maybe it's a 50-50 split. At least we would know, you know, where everybody stands. Right now, we don't know where everybody stands. Like somebody said before, is not a lot of people like to come to these meetings, or they don't have time to come to these meetings. We need to find out where the town sits. Let's just do a survey. Maybe it's an, you know, 80-20 split. I mean, who knows? We don't really know, but I think we should. Secondly, my last appeal is to the Foxborough Reporter. You know, I get the newspaper, I've been getting it for 10 years, right? There's a slanted bias there, that's fine. We live in Massachusetts, we understand. But to be labeled from a gentleman, Dennis Naughton, whoever this gentleman is, never met him before. You don't know my political persuasion. I'm here just as a concerned parent. But he puts out a column that says something along the lines that we are right-wing activists or extremists or whatever word he used. We're not. We're just concerned parents. I'm not trying to, you know, pick a fight with you guys. But I would just caution the reporter to start maybe printing out some other views and other opinions. We've given you guys ample information. maybe they could do some reporting and take that and look into alternative, engineering methods so that we could get rid of these masks. And to the gentleman behind me here who got up and said that you guys are doing a great job and following the CDC guidelines, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Masks don't work, and we know that. Masks, they're what, 8% effective maybe at the most from one study that was done in some other country? I mean, you guys are all up here wearing masks, most of you, and they're not N95s. They're just T-shirts over your face. I mean, so there's no science behind it. To the gentleman I'm sitting next to right here. And people need to start getting called out on it. That's why we're calling you guys out. I don't think you're doing a great job. I said that the first time that I was here. I have no ill will towards any one of you, but in my position where I work, if I did such a terrible job like you guys do it, I'd be fired. So we're putting you guys on the spot. We want some reaction out of you. We want answers. And that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Leah Gibson?
Well, I think I'm perfect to follow that commentary, because I would like to say as a community, I hope we can do better and be respectful to each other and be respectful to these boards that sit up here and do a good job for our community. So I'm here as the parent of 2 middle school children, one who's old enough to be vaccinated and one who's not. And I want to tell you guys you are doing a good job, and thank you. Because what's most important here is that we have our kids in school and they're learning and they're around their friends so that the scores that we're talking about don't continue to slip. Because last year was hell in my house trying to manage homeschool. Some kids did great, some kids did not. So I am just so grateful as a single working parent that my children get to safely go to school every day and that you guys are keeping the teachers and staff safe as well. I didn't plan on addressing the comments, but telling people to get off their butts or stick their necks out, keep doing what you're doing. Keep firm to what you believe and what the CDC or the American Association of Pediatrics is saying to do. Anytime there's a policy that's made that a side doesn't like, you will hear from that side very loud. I think we see the same small group here every week, but there are literally hundreds of parents like me who maybe don't watch or sit home and watch and are compliant and are very thankful. So, with that, sorry, I don't really have anything prepared or written like that, but, let's keep our kids in school, let's keep them safe, and just know that there are literally hundreds of parents that are compliant and happy with the way things are going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, is there anybody else who's here now who didn't get a chance yet to speak and wants to come forward? Okay, I thank you. I also want to acknowledge we've got 2 community inbox submissions, Mr. Corey Hayden of Alden Street and Dennis Naughton of Everett Lane. And so thank you for those comments, folks, and that those also get included into the record. And I can assure you that everybody on school committee and admin reads them. So thank you. And as a side note, before moving on to the next agenda, I want to thank, truly, whether I agree with you or not, I want to thank you for coming and talking, because that's brave. And that needs to be acknowledged. This is how it's supposed to work. So, Mr. Pyres, you mentioned the first night that you spoke, tonight was the 3rd night you spoke, that, why am I here? Why do I have to come here? And the answer is, it's how stuff gets done. So and everybody who volunteers to be on this board, everybody who volunteers on every board in town, everybody who stays late after work to do something in town, whether it's coaching, church group, town board, Rotary, whatever, thank you. It takes all of us to make this community. And so again, whether I agree with you or not in terms of position, I want to know I want everybody to know, for one, at least for my part, I read absolutely everything you send me. I've understood absolutely everything you've sent me. And I do a lot of reading and listening on my own. And I just want to thank you all for coming, because it's not easy, because you all have other places you could be and people who miss you. So thank you. Moving on to the next item, approval of minutes. First up, minutes from September 21st. Did anybody on the committee have additions, subtractions, edits that needed to be made? Nope. Okay. Anybody want to entertain a motion? Or I'll entertain a motion if you want to make it.
I motion to approve the last meeting's minutes from September 21st.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Passes 4-0-0. I think that's it for minutes. Timing. Next up, our teaching and learning highlight. Who'd like to take the lead?
I will be happy to introduce them.
Thank you.
So we have Miss Cami Tadoldi, our Director of Music, and she's here with some of her fabulous students from orchestra and choir. And we have kind of a twofer, if you will. They're going to be our teaching and learning highlight, but then we're also going to have a discussion on the elementary report card and edit. But more importantly, they're going to be talking about their preparations for their upcoming Voices and Strings concert that's coming up on October 28th. And also share a little bit with you as part of the highlight of what the last 2 years from a very disrupted experience has looked like, and how they have really persevered through this, and share what that has looked like and what it looks like now.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back, and I have to say that it's just been fantastic having our students back in the classroom and making music together. We know that music education is not successful in a virtual or even a hybrid learning environment, so having all of our kids back in the room together and singing and having a concert schedule has just been really fantastic. So just for perspective, our seniors here, how many of you are seniors? Their last time they had like a real full concert calendar was 9th grade. So I know they're excited about the year to come, so I'm going to hand it over to them and go for it. So.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm a senior. I play the cello in the orchestra, and I just want to say that I'm so glad that we're back together. We're so much more productive as a whole orchestra now that we're together in full. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about rehearsals. We start every day at 7:25 in the morning, and we work for an hour, really getting away at that music every morning. Last year, having 2 separate orchestras playing, we never played together. We played together twice the whole year, and it was really hard. And I think we're all so happy to be together playing and making music. Another thing that we missed last year was our symphony orchestra. Our symphony orchestra consists of winds, brass, and strings. We all get to play together as an ensemble. It's personally my favorite. So symphony orchestra it's not only a great way to get involved, but we get an opportunity to play music that we really can't play with individual ensembles, and it encourages us to work together as musicians and listen to each other, and we get to play with instruments that we might not otherwise get the chance to play with. And with the whole 12 feet last year, we didn't get to do that. So I'm really, really happy and excited that we're gonna go out with a bang senior year with music. Thank you.
And as Ms. Tadoldi had mentioned, another really special part of our current school year is our return to our normal concert schedule. A really important and notable facet of our Foxboro music program is its ability to provide students with opportunities to be professionals. Through our concerts, students are given the chance to practice and rehearse for a formal event, emulating aspects of professional musicianship and allowing students to grow through learning how to achieve set goals with readiness. Although some concerts were set in place through the hard work of our music staff last year, we have yet to have a regular concert season, as Ms. Sidoldi mentioned, since our freshman year. As we are able to now return to our normal concert schedule, the practice of professionalism that's so integral to our Foxboro music education is now something that we can once again further enhance the experience of Foxboro music students.
This year, we've also been able to re-implement our section leader program. Juniors and seniors are picked to become leaders of their individual sections and mentor and guide the underclassmen throughout the year, as well as be encouraging and positive role models. This is especially important this year for the freshmen and sophomores, as they've never had a normal year of high school orchestra. All of us up here are section leaders, and we've been able to show the underclassmen the ropes and how we operate, since they've never experienced that before. Heading into our first concert of the year in a few weeks, we're getting ready to show them the professional environment of our concerts. I personally feel I've grown from this experience and have become more responsible and positive as both a person and a leader. Leading and mentoring our underclassmen is such an amazing experience for all groups involved, and we're really excited to get back to that this year.
All right. Hi everybody, I'm Juliana Preston. I'm also a senior and I play the violin in the orchestra. Aside from the music aspect, a big factor that we were able to do this year is spend a lot more time with one another in and outside of the classroom, which I think is a really important part aside from the music, just to get to know one another. So for example, last Friday we were able to have our annual FMA cookout, which is a really good opportunity to meet the 8th graders, get to know them, for them to know us and introduce them to the music program in the high school. And so again, we weren't able to do that last year due to COVID, but now we were able to do that, and it was a really good opportunity. We're able to sing the national anthem with the band before the football game, and it's a really good bonding experience. We get some good food. You can never go wrong with food. So again, it was a really good experience, so I'm really glad we were able to do that. Additionally, last year we were unable to stay after because of COVID, but now we're able to have sectionals after school, which I really appreciate sectionals because you're able to really define each part and really grow more as a section instead of just playing in the ensemble altogether. So that's really productive in terms of how we produce the music and what we can get done in the time that we have. So I really appreciate that. And so yeah, we're all really excited to be back, to have at least a pretty normal year, and to again have all the concerts that we can. So I'm really excited.
All right. Hello, my name is Sofia Sugaris. I am an alto section leader in the choir, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the community aspect of choir and how it's different being back after last year's just experience. Something that Juliana had mentioned, or Maggie had mentioned, was the 2 different cohorts. This was crazy. We had 2 completely different choirs that were practicing, and we were in completely different places, and we had no idea what the other choir sounded like for the entire half of the year until we came back together as a full choir. That was crazy to think about. We were talking about this yesterday while thinking about tonight. And we were just like, that was crazy that we had to actually do that. But another thing that was super, super cool this year that's already started to come back is bonding with the underclassmen, and like Paige had mentioned, the section leader program. Something that we've already started is we're calling it the Choir Section Leader Project. And we've been staying after, we've been doing this planning, and it's a really good bonding experience, and we've been able to grow this community in the choir, and I'm sure that the band and orchestra have done the same thing. We really have a community coming back together, and it's really nice to see that growth between friendships and bonds and in the choir as a whole.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherry. I'm a senior in the Foxborough choir. I sing soprano. So like Sophie was talking about, we had 2 different choirs for almost half the year, and in the time that we got to sing together, we had to do it outside because of just the regulations that were required. So we were literally under a tent in the courtyard of our cafeteria for 15 weeks. And yeah, we were talking about that yesterday, and it sounds absolutely insane. So I'm really excited to be back with the entire choir, singing our masterwork and getting the chance to rehearse with everyone around us. We have a strong section, and we're back to doing sectionals too. And the attendance is going strong there. We're working really hard on our repertoire, and we're really looking forward to October 28th, our first concert.
That's great. That's right. Anybody in the committee?
I could always ask a million things about music.
I know.
If you didn't know, I was at the first FMA cookout, which I'm not even sure Cammie knows, was in July of 1980, when Steve Massey got appointed to the position. I went to the cookout as an 8th grader, and then I probably sat in the first section leader meeting 42 years ago as well. So I was there when it all began. So to hear your voices resounding about the value, it's huge. So thank you.
Can I ask your two names? I didn't catch them. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm Bo.
I'm Paige.
Hi, Bo.
We're both seniors in the orchestra.
Hi, Bo. Hi, Paige. Thank you. At least for my part, I'm overwhelmed to hear the range of benefits that you're. I mean, none of them are particularly surprising, but it does my heart and mind well to hear them. From the leadership, mentorship, community, and honestly, just the chance to really deepen your craft and have that time together to do it. And so it's so wonderful to hear, because that was one of the more devastating things from last year's hefty restrictions. And I'm so glad to have you all back and doing what you do.
Mr. Ritter.
Please.
First of all, I can't believe that you're all so grown up. So I love these opportunities when you come to school committee and I get to see you come full circle. And I think so many of you that I've known over the years, it's so exciting to see your leadership be leveraged in this way, that you can influence the peers that are coming up, because you have so much to offer. I know the people at home watching are thinking how mature and well-spoken you are, because you are. And you know, aside from your talent, which is obvious. I just want to say that listening to your enthusiasm makes me share your excitement. I did go to the cookout last weekend, and my favorite part was the band. I love listening to the music. I think you guys are amazing, and I'm just so happy that you're having this opportunity and this experience, and that this community does such a great job of supporting the music program. And thank you for your leadership too, Ms. Tadoldi. I think it's fantastic, and thanks for bringing them to us.
And I would, to echo Dr. Mello's comments, but at the same time, to think about all of the things that you mentioned and how it seems crazy and you can't believe last year. I think about emotionally how hard it was for you as students, and then to not be able to have all of the activities or in the same way, and then physically as well, having to be outside, the distance that you had. It was very different when it comes to band and to orchestra and to chorus, and not being able to sing for so long and have to be outside. So you really did persevere through so much. And to think that as seniors you haven't had that opportunity in so long to be together. I think about even the marching band, half of them, you know, at the last 2 football games watching as well, they have not had that opportunity to march, half the band itself. And I think that does speak to all of your leadership and the leadership of the department under Ms. Cammie Tadoldi as well, because it is quite impressive. No complaints ever. It was just always, how can we? And that really was the mantra all year, and it has paid off. And clearly, to see your leadership here this evening, it just really makes it all worth it.
And we hope to see you guys at our upcoming concert. We've got, well, you've already seen the marching band, so we've been at full swing, which has been great.
Plug it.
We have Voices and Strings, October 28th, which we do a masterwork every year. So we're actually doing Schubert's Mass in G. We'll have professional soloists. November 4th, we have our Fall Jazz Fest, which will feature all of our jazz ensembles with professional Tanya Darby, who is a trumpet player from Berkeley, also plays the Jazz at Lincoln Center, and the Diva Big Band. So yeah, it's just a small snapshot. So hope we can make it. And we're really proud of all of you guys, and thank you for being here tonight and sharing your experience.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks, folks. It is possible to be impressed and also not surprised. So thank you all. Mr. Doldy, I believe you have the second part of this update.
But only because Mr. Pearson brought it up. We received a lovely donation this summer of a Foxborough High School Jazz Ensemble record from 1983, which Mr. Pearson is featured on. So it's wonderful that our community digs some of this stuff out and helps us. So I feel like we need a museum, Foxborough Public Schools Museum. This would go right in it.
I have the other ones if you want them too. I have 82 and 84, so.
So Mr. Doldy is here to talk to us a little bit about a small change to our elementary school report card, so that it may be better aligned with actually the curriculum that's being enacted in the classroom. So thank you for coming.
So the K through 4 report cards are standards-based, so our current standards are listed right there for you. So I'm actually looking at updating standard number 2, so this would require your vote. So standard number 2 reads, demonstrates understanding of recorder skills in grades 3 and 4. We find that this current language is restrictive to grades 3 and 4 and also restrictive to just the recorder, whereas we're teaching many different kinds of instruments to students in grades K through 4, including ukulele, recorder, we have hand percussion, ORF instruments. So we would like to update standard 2 to read demonstrates understanding of appropriate musical instrument skills, which would be all-encompassing for grades K through 4 and also allow for us to give feedback to students on all of the instruments that we teach in the curriculum grades K through 4. So I'm looking for your vote, the school committee, to update those, and these have also been endorsed by our principals as well.
Any questions from the committee?
No. Is that, well, I say no, and then I'm going to turn and ask you a question.
We all have our skills.
So is that
You guys
something that we
very
can
good
vote on tonight, or
Yes.
just because, okay.
If
All
if
right.
folks are comfortable on the committee and somebody wants to put forward a motion, we can entertain it.
Well, I mean, before the motion, I would agree with the way you worded it too. I also like the idea of appropriate musical, because part of the teaching at that level is teaching them how to use the right techniques on the instruments as given,
Right.
as opposed to just banging and toys and just noisemakers, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's the whole goal of that curriculum, so I think it's well worded.
Thank you.
Agreed.
I would move to accept the replacing of number 2 on the K to 4 music report card to what is listed as demonstrates understanding of appropriate musical instrument skills.
I second that.
All in favor? 400.
Thank you all, and thank
Passes.
you for your continued support.
Thank you.
For the
Thank
thoughtful
you.
presentation.
Very much.
Next up, we have Mr. Corey Michael Lazik to, oh, sorry, my bad. Next up, we have Dr. Amy Barros with the superintendent's update.
Okay, as far as the update, there's 3 things. One is the COVID update. Currently, as far as in Foxborough, we have a 1.47% positivity rate, so we've seen that decrease. We have currently 7 cases in the Foxborough schools, and those, again, are viewed right on the main webpage as far as the number of active cases and then total cases since the school year has begun. So it's updated weekly on Wednesdays. Our test and stay program continues to go very well, and speaking with the companies that have come in, and they've been really flexible in working with us, and that's not necessarily been the case in many other districts from what we've heard. So we're really appreciative that it's going well and that they're able to meet our needs here. As stated earlier, we know that the mask mandate from the commissioner has been extended at least through November 1st. And that is the commissioner saying that after consulting with medical experts and state health officials, that he has extended that mandate. That mandate, again, if it were lifted, as far as the vaccination rate, looking at least 80% of students and staff in a school building, if they are vaccinated, and vaccinated students and staff would still be required to wear masks based on that. I had mentioned at the last school committee meeting where we were with our numbers, so I'm just going to update you on where we are as well. At this time, we have seen some slight increases. Overall, the high school has moved up a couple of percentage points. We're now at 67.8% of high school students that are fully vaccinated, and when we look at that with our staff at the high school, we have a 71% fully vaccinated rate. The vaccination rate at the middle school, we've seen some slight increases there. Again, 5th and 6th grade really are not, most students are not eligible, but in 7th and 8th and 7th grade, it's moved up from 57.3 to 60.7%, and in 8th grade from 58.3 to 58.5. So slight increases, but again, as far as the school that would be anywhere close to what the commissioner has put in that mask mandate, at the high school, we're at 71% as of right now. I think that it's important also to remember that the school committee, we are, the school committee is the legal agent for the schools, and we are required to follow the state mandates when it comes from the Department of Education. Federal mandates, state mandates, we have many of those. You're going to hear about that in the tiered focus monitoring report in the next agenda item about being in compliance and following all of the regulations that are put forth by the Department of Education. That is something that we do have to follow. That is my responsibility as superintendent to ensure that we are following those state and federal mandates, just as it's the responsibility of the school committee to make sure that those are being followed as well. There are many compliances that we follow. It has to do with funding that we receive, whether it's through federal or state grants. It's through the monitoring of the regulations, again, that we'll hear for the tiered focus monitoring on our English learner program as an example. So those mandates are not only important as far as to follow them, we have to follow them as far as being a public school system. If we were private schools, yes, private schools, they do not follow those. When they choose not to wear masks, they can do that because they're private schools and they're not having to follow those mandates. Just as the commissioner and the 80% being on a call reminding, if you're a private school, no, you don't have to abide by that. But as far as our vaccination rates, that's where we are at the high school level. And we had a flu vaccine this evening over at the high school in the cafeteria. That's going on until 8 p.m. tonight, if anybody is still interested in receiving their flu vaccine. One of the other updates is MCAS. Families will start to receive, we're mailing them out on Thursday, the individual MCAS results of their children's scores. That will come with a lot of information from the reporting on the score itself and how it has been reported a little bit differently. And Dr. Mello can talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. But I think that it's really important to remind everyone, and just as the Department of Ed has done this, we cannot compare these scores to 2019, which is the last time that the MCAS was administered. As the Secretary of Education had said, the results clearly illustrate how the disrupted school year of remote and hybrid learning impacted students' academic achievement. For the majority of the year, for grades 5 through 12, they were physically in the building 2 days a week. They were home 3 days. We've said over and over how important it is to be in front of the classroom teacher and that you cannot have the same experience when you're not in front of the teacher. We know that it was difficult. It was difficult for teachers. It was difficult for parents. It was difficult for students. And it's a year that we don't ever want to repeat, and it's a year that we had to pretty much reinvent education. But MCAS cannot be compared to 2019 when there are the variables that come into play that came into play last year.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
So some of the specific reasons why MCAS cannot be compared to the 2019 test administration are outlined in the parent letter that will come home with your child's MCAS results. Significantly, in grades 3 to 8, the test itself was not the same test.
Right.
They shortened the number of subtests that students took during this test administration. They also changed the testing window, so it was not administered at the same time. So they are not parallel testing situations. They are not parallel test questions. They are not parallel test lengths. So that is important. In high school, they voted to modify the competency determination and also adjusted the testing windows as well. In addition, because 3rd and 4th grade students did not previously participate in a test administration in their school career, there are no student growth percentiles for those students available. We can only compare growth to previous test administrations. Because we are measuring growth, comparing 2 different tests, and because the outcomes of the tests were so different, the state has adjusted the student growth percentile median from 50, which was normed across the state, down to 27 as the state average. So the growth will be normed against that. That is done by the psychometricians at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that is included for your, to help you understand the results that you're seeing, because there's going to be graphs in the report. There's a letter from DESE explaining that in the packet that you will receive. There's also a letter from the commissioner. That being said, the letter that we are providing from your child's principal does explain some of these changes to help you make sense of them. And if you have questions, you should reach out. We are currently working with our MCAS data, keeping it contextualized and looking more at the universal screening tools and the baseline assessments that we give students in our schools this year through our data team meetings, our PLCs, and our other collaborative time that we can look at the data, because it is very important for us to understand where students are so that we can address any unfinished learning that they may have had. We will be talking more about this at a future school committee meeting.
And another part of that is the Department of Education is not going to be issuing any new accountability determinations for districts as well, understanding that this is a very different test and based on all of the variables that were in place last year.
One other thing that I didn't mention is that some students were eligible, if they were remote students, to take the test remotely. We don't know about the constraints and the controls around that testing environment that students had, although they tried to put some mitigation strategies in place. Those results are included in the overall aggregate of the results that we have. So that's also an important difference that we've never had in the MCAS testing situation before.
And as far as supports in place for students, we've been receiving the ESSER funds those are the federal pandemic relief funds. The ESSER 3 funds are the latest. That was a survey that was sent out in September to many stakeholders, families, community members, to see where the priorities would be for those ESSER funds, because it is to be supporting for a wide range of priorities based on meeting students' academic, social, emotional needs, their mental health needs, all resulting from the pandemic. So that's part of the American Rescue Plan. Those funds, we have submitted that grant. We're waiting for approval on that, and that would be to support any additional academic needs, again, social emotional needs, mental health needs as well. The only other updates that I had, the student registration, which was mentioned during public comment, is one of those that is due October 13th. I know that it was stated as far as having to say yes when you didn't agree with the mask policy. The registration itself, when you're answering the questions, it has a yes/no, because, for example, one of the things that we're asking families are, do they agree to be able for a photo release or a video release? So if you say no, are you agreeing to the other, the student handbooks and following those? So the wording itself, it's to abide by those policies. So you might not agree with the mask policy, but you're agreeing to abide by having your student with the state mandate to wear a mask. So as far as the language and the way it's written, I know language was suggested here. It's to abide by the mask policy, but it is due by by the 13th of October, and it's important that it's completed because it's for updates of emergency numbers or any communications that we need to do, as well as sending out communications that are more general. The other update is the Professional Development Day on Friday for all faculty and staff, so there's no school for students, so it's an extra long holiday weekend for students, so we hope that families enjoy that long weekend. We're really excited about all of the professional development that we will be engaging in on Friday. Don't know if you want to add now to that, or?
We'll be continuing the work that we started in August around the multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS, that are systems that we are putting into our schools and firming up. They're systems that we've had, but we are making them more systemic so that they're consistent across all buildings, so that we can intervene and provide timely supports for students when they need it in real time, along with intervention and enrichment. So those are systems that we continue to refine and learn about. So this Friday, we'll be working as a whole staff to get some training from Dr. Lori Kazna. She works with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we are very excited about getting our entire faculty, that is all of our teachers, related service providers, educational assistants, training on multi-tiered system of supports.
So that's it for updates.
Thank you. Just, if I might echo something you just said, one of the things I believe, at least for my part on the committee, I was so excited that you were delving into the multi-tiered system of supports is it's a systemic, school-wide, district-wide way to give kids help at the point that they need it in the things that they need. So we heard concern, rightful concern about some of the challenges that students had last year, and that the fact that the district is going all in on the MTSS is, I think, something that speaks to that specifically. And the other thing, just more anecdotal than that I'll say, is as somebody, meaning me, who has proctored more than my fair share of MCAS with middle and high school students, you're always going to get a subset of students who really don't care about the test, want to blow off the test, fall asleep during the test, because some of them have families who say, blow off the test, it's a stupid test. You might have some educators who feel the same way, but it's the measurements that we have. One of the reasons we heard all the hullabaloo last year about please don't test us, please don't test us, please don't test us, is because we knew full well that the tests were going to be a huge change. But then you had other people on the other side saying, yeah, they're going to be bad. Let's get the numbers. Let's get the numbers and see what happens. So I'd caution anybody seeing the letter coming home, I'd caution you against overreacting against it. Overreacting against any drop. As a teacher, I expect it. As a parent, I expect it. As a former education administrator, I expect it. And so that's just my own 2 cents. Thank you. Any questions or comments stemming from the superintendent update or points therein? Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Michael Lazick, talking about tiered focus monitoring of English language learners. Mr. Michael Lazick, thank you for being here.
So as you guys recall, last year...
Mike.
Sorry.
Just slide it over, it's fine. He always tells us. He's on it.
It was quick.
He's on it.
So as you may recall, last year, if we go back to the emergency closure, spring of 2020, that was the year that we had our self-assessments due for special education, for English learners, as well as our civil rights. And so that was postponed into last year. And lucky for Foxborough, we had to do the self-assessment and the on-site in the same given year. Usually they spread it out. Year 1 is a self-assessment, year 2 is the on-site. We had those happening at the same time, both special education and our English learners. And so I reported out on the special education. We got that report earlier. And I'm here tonight to report out on our findings from our English learner review from last spring. I will say that out of the 12 areas of findings, the purpose of this tiered focus monitoring is to the district to ensure that we're following all state and federal regulations, as Dr. Bertels kind of mentioned earlier. And so they're going through our student files, they're going through interviews with staff, they are looking at our processes, our procedures, our handbooks that we have. And ultimately what they do is they come up with a big report at the end of areas of full compliance, areas of partial compliance, or areas of no compliance. And so as a result, we had 4 areas of partial compliance, and those are areas truly that I consider really minor areas of compliance issues that we have, stemming from the Look Act that recently passed in 2017, so some changes as far as screening even some of our preschool students that before the Look Act passed in 2017 we're not doing. So that was just an example. Another one would be part of our L handbook was waiver requirements. We currently in Foxboro have 1 program, that's our sheltered English immersion program. We don't have our bilingual programs that bigger districts were to have, and so the purpose of the waiver would be to waive of that, waiver of those programs, whether it be a bilingual program or any other type of program. But here in Foxborough, we have 1 as our sheltered English immersion, and so, like I said, 4 areas of really minor partial compliance issues that we have, and so as a result, we met over the summer. We created a corrective action plan for each area. It was recently accepted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, so now this year we're working here, and it's really an opportunity for growth for our educators, for our programming, for our supports, and we hope to submit our final corrective action plan by the end of the school year, and then we should be good.
And I would just add to that as part of this, we received some grant funding to support the work in this area. So we are working with a fantastic consultant who is meeting monthly with our 2 English learner teachers. Our population is relatively small if you compare it to other districts in the state. However, it has grown significantly for us over time. So she is helping us with our curriculum resources, and she's creating some tools for us to help measure and identify and track our students who are in receiving those services. And actually, she will be working with the team this Friday during the afternoon for their professional development as well after our morning on multi-tiered systems of support. So everything, the ball is really rolling already. And as I agree with you, I think these are things that are very easy to correct, and we're already on our way.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions?
No, I think the information provided was very helpful.
No, the report's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'd ask, is there any, are there any of the standards that you had in mind as being particularly happy or proud with the efforts despite the rating?
Sure, I would say that when it comes down to the curriculum, right? Because I think we
Right.
heavily relied on what we have existing within our classrooms. When our educators are pulling students out of the classroom, they necessarily didn't have a dedicated curriculum. So in this case, it was a good opportunity for us to look at those specialized kind of curriculums for language services. And working with Dr. Mooney, who is our consultant, through Dr. Mello, it's been a really good experience to kind of look at how we're going to plan that instruction. So I think it was a really good opportunity for us to reflect on kind of our current practices and areas for improvement.
That's good.
Okay. Oh, that was easy.
Thank you very much.
Very clear. Thank you so much for your
It was
time,
very clear,
Mr.
yeah.
Michael Isaac.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
clear.
Next up, we have Dr. Berdos, Dr. Mello, talking about our 2021 Culture and Climate Survey results.
Before we get started with that, I would just like to acknowledge that we have all of our principals here in the audience. So we have Ms. Diana Myers-Pakla there at the high school principal, Ms. Karen Frazier at the middle school. We have Mr. Mike Stanton for Taylor, Michelle McCarthy for the Borough, and Kate Campbell for the IGO. And then Mr. Mike Lazick will be staying with us this evening too. So the K-12 Culture and Climate Survey, as you're aware, is administered annually, except for it was not administered year before last. So this was our 9th administration of the survey. It's a very lengthy survey. It's administered to parents, to our faculty and staff, and it's administered to our parents. Students in 5 through grade 11, because our seniors have left at the time that the survey is administered, so the high school students are 3 of the grades. The administration of this survey was a little bit later in the year based on when we've typically administered the survey, and that had to do with we were coming back full in person, so a lot was going on at that time. Our participation rates were pretty similar as in the past for our parents. We had about a third of elementary, a third of middle school, and a third of high school parents answer the survey. And our faculty and staff, that percentage participation was pretty similar as years past too, as you see there in the memo. What was different is our student participation rate. So we had more of our middle school students that participated with 63% and 37% of the high school students. There's a number of contributing factors that we've discussed as far as that. Part of it is time of year and coming back full in person. Scheduling, when we think about the high school, not only did we have AP tests going on and MCAS, and there's a lot going on scheduling and trying to get that in. And then just the unique circumstances that were part of the year as well. Again, going back to part of that, going back full in person. But the parent participation and the faculty and staff participation rate, we really didn't see that much of a difference. So we have a PowerPoint presentation. You have it in your packet. It is very lengthy. We've actually cut out a lot of slides of what's in your packet. This is the district, so the overall results for the district. Each of the schools have different results as well, but we really use this information to see systemically what it looks like at the district level, and then at the school level to be able to target more specifically for improvement planning and where the unique circumstances are with each of the schools. So the PowerPoint presentation is going to be kind of 4 sections, if you will. It's the parents, it's the faculty and staff, it's the students, and then at the end, it kind of takes those 3 groups and looks at across those 3. I think what's important to remember is that this is perception data, so it's based on those that answered the survey. So it's not something that you can generalize because it's not a random sample. Some highlights that you have here in front of you, I'll just target a couple of them, that we continue to have the school faculty really appreciate their school administrators and the climate in which they are teaching and living in with their school families, particularly during a very hard year, the impact of COVID. There were some challenges that were related to communication when we think about all that took place last year. There are some, when we look at, we have verbatim comments that go through, and it's all the open-ended comments. So when we look at the overall school quality, and we look at the graphs for those, and we see a high percentage of strongly agree and agree, then we go back and we look at the information too, based on comments. So some of these highlights is taking that information together. So the overview here is, if you look at those different areas, it's looking at academic preparation, it's looking at student support, it's looking at school leadership, faculty relations and support, parent engagement and involvement, safety and behavior, social emotional learning, and school operations. Some of the key insights, again, there's a lot of consistency here in what we've seen in the survey, but a strong majority of participants, they continue to give the school high marks, with 88% of parents, 91% of school faculty, and 83% of students rating their school as good or excellent. That is an increase from the last time that this was administered. Overall, both parents and school faculty members rated the district's management of COVID-19 good or excellent, 87% and 92% respectively. And we saw a little bit less with students as far as their rating there, but there's strong agreement that they felt safe in the schools and the management and the decisions that were made. Some other key insights here, that many of the highest ranking indicators were in the area of student support. And that is really important, particularly in the year that we have just come out of. When we look at the social emotional learning dimensions, how we're promoting acceptance with students, how we're helping them be more comfortable within the school environment from a safety standpoint, and then also from interacting with their peers. So what Dr. Mello and I thought we would do, go through the parent section, hit some highlights, then take a pause, see if you had any particular questions or things that you wanted us to speak a little bit more in specificity about. So overall, as far as the school quality, as I had said, we really see a high level of good or excellent. In the comments that we read by parents, some said, it was really hard to say excellent just based on the school year, but again, very complimentary, but just hard to say excellent. And that you could see in the verbatim comments. As far as the management overall, the vast majority rated our work and everything that we did in handling COVID as a district as excellent or good. Academic preparation, when we look across this area, this compares the last 3 administrations of this survey. We can see the impact from the pandemic and some of the scores here, if you will, the percentages, particularly when we're looking at students being prepared to do well in the next grade level, receiving the effective instructions for his or her abilities, and giving useful information about how, for teachers to give parents useful information how to help their child. So if we see a little bit of slight dips there, we really have to contextualize that and think about the pandemic itself and what our environment looked like, and particularly the hardship not only on teachers and students, but on families as well.
If we look at student support and the comparison over time, this is parents' perception of how well their students are supported by their teachers, their counselors, their school. The results are pretty consistent over time. I think in some areas we actually saw a little bit of a jump, and in other areas we saw, obviously, after-school activities. Those weren't available last year, so we see a decline there. We know that students weren't at the middle and high school levels. They were only in school 2 days a week. So thinking about their interactions with counselors may have declined a little bit, but overall, they're pretty consistent over time.
The next few slides here were really measuring the transition from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. And we can see some changes that are there, and we know that there were a lot of things we were not able to do because of the situation that we were in. But with that being said, at the same time, there's been a lot more that's happened this year, and grabbing even more, whether it's 5th and 6th grade or 9th and 10th grade, to be able to provide additional support, knowing that they didn't have some of those same kinds of activities that would have been done in the past. And then also thinking about how we can greater support their acclimation to their new school.
When we look at this one, this is a comparison of school leadership over time. So the indicator is school-based administrators make decisions that are in the best interest of students. Again, that's been fairly consistent over the years. We actually saw a small jump in that last year.
Parent engagement, when we think about keeping your child, keeping and being informed about your child's grades, that's definitely an area that we saw with a 10-point percentage decrease there. That was a focus area for us to think about that. We also know, again, it was very different and communication looked different, and a lot of people needed more communication because you didn't get what you would typically have in a year. And informing what your child is learning in school. Some became very familiar with that because they were doing a lot of support and teaching themselves at home. But at the same time, it also made it harder by not physically being in the building as you typically would. Some other things that we have done to increase communication, Seesaw is an example, the elementary level.
Right, so last year, based on the feedback we got during our school closure, we had made a move to Microsoft Teams as our primary mode of parent communication at the middle and high school levels. At the elementary level, we had FPS Online Classroom, known as Buzz. That program has been discontinued. We have just implemented Seesaw, which is a great window into the classroom for parents, for two-way communication, so that they can see what's happening in their classroom, and continue to use Teams in grades 5 through 12.
When we look at safety and behavior in a comparison over time here, we see strong agreement and safety. And we saw that across the board, actually, from faculty, from parents. And we know how important, particularly last year, was because it looked different with all of the different protocols that we had in place. As far as social emotional comparisons over time, a couple of new questions that we asked were the comfortability level of interacting with peers in class and then virtually. Online as well, you see a difference of students being, parents saying that their students are more comfortable, obviously, in class than online. And we saw that quite honestly too in the Teams calls and with with students' engagement or not wanting to engage as much when they were online on those remote Wednesdays, as an example.
When we look at the school operations, the comparison over time, there are also some new questions there. My child's school has made the necessary updates to health and safety measures. My child's school has maintained open lines of communication with families, and the district has maintained open line of communications. So those received favorable ratings. Those are the new ones that we added this year.
And I think that high level of agreement is really important, particularly in a year that was so hard. virtual events that took place, the question that was asked, what would you like to see go forward? Because, what were some of the silver linings, if you will? And those definitely came out as far as the live streaming Foxborough cable access. They really provided the community the inside of whether it was sporting events or, the concerts and things that we were able to have. It looked very different, but they truly kept our community connected. But at the same time, some of the events that would be normal presentations, I am thinking about kindergarten information night, or some of the AP potential nights at the high school. It just ran the gamut. So many to be able to do those virtually. What we found were a lot more parents were able to participate by having it virtually, and they said, this is great because I'm able to participate. Same thing with parent-teacher conferences was something that came out from the teachers as well, but definitely from parents being able to participate when maybe they hadn't been able to before. So we'll pause here. These two slides were the highest ranking indicators you could see that really focused on school operations, which is not surprising when we think about all of the protocols and the hybrid schedule itself and being able to provide a safe school learning environment for students. And then that next one as far as what would rank lower in agreement and looking at preparation for hybrid learning as an example. We hope that that's not anything that we ever have to even think about again in the future. And then obviously parent engagement. Parents weren't able to be in schools, so the engagement looked very different from the parent side. So we'll pause there if there were any comments that you had or reflections based on what you had from the parent perspective.
I was just looking at like the parent-teacher conferences. Is there a way to do something along the lines of have virtual opportunities to do that, but then also have in-person, but at different times?
I don't know if any of the principals want to speak to what you've been already talking about.
That is what we are going to take this through.
Oh, you need to go talk. He's signaling you.
Sorry.
Now you're getting sucked in.
I'm just speaking for the elementary school, but we are giving that option this year for the in-person or remote. So.
That's great, thank you.
And I see Ms. Frazier nodding her head back there as far as the middle school having that option as well. And then not at the high school. It's different as far as, each building and how conferences run anyway. It would be very hard with the, if you think about even open house, how you moved very quickly from classroom to classroom.
Right.
Okay.
Dr. Burdos, I would just offer though that if a parent wanted to meet with a teacher, that certainly that is an option that they could do. It's just difficult to manage that on an evening such as parent conferences, but if they did want to meet, obviously, yes, that could be arranged with an individual teacher.
Did we get that on?
We didn't.
Yeah.
Want to repeat what she said?
I think what the high school principal is saying is that it's difficult to manage during parent-teacher conference night to have it part in person or part virtually. So if a parent wants to meet with the teacher, that can be arranged, but on a different time.
Right.
Did I'm good from the nod that I got that right. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So you had mentioned when the support for transition to the schools came up from the parents, which I thought was a good information to take, because it's something that's been worked on for many years, the transitioning of our students at all levels. And I think what you said, I was really appreciative too, was that there was more done this year. So that was the survey that was done in the spring. That's the results we got from the survey for last year. It made all the sense in the world to me. I'd be curious if any one of the principals, if you wish, would like to elaborate on some more things that were done this year in reaction to knowing, as educators and as experienced leaders, what happened last year was unique and challenging, but then we made adjustments so that we could transition to this year effectively and strong. I would suspect you have done that. You stated that you've done that, but I'd be interested if anyone wants to talk about what you did to step up and change the game because you knew where last year was.
Just make sure you come up to the microphone.
Diana, I'm thinking about maybe the schedule and how it changed for the high school, particularly for the first 3 days of school.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So quite a bit of discussion had taken place at the end of last year in particular, with all the changes and everything else that had gone on. And when we take a look at our freshmen, or this year's freshmen, I'll say, last year was 8th grade. It was a hybrid year. You know, what is it coming to the high school? This year's sophomores, what was last year like for them as freshmen at the high school? So in looking at our current 9th graders and our current 10th graders, our teachers and our department heads in conversation, we knew that there's the culture of the high school, the students don't really know because they haven't been there on a daily basis in the same way that our juniors and our seniors have been. So in our first 3 days of school, we did a little bit of a change up. Our first day, we did all 7 periods because it's so important for students to be able to see all of their teachers and, you know, find out what it is, what do I need for class. It's always that angst. Do I need a book, or is my laptop going to be okay? What else am I going to need? So meeting all of them. But then on our second and our third day, we actually had a 9th and 10th grade academy, as it was called, that we're going to continue again next year. So some of the things that our students went to their advisory groups, and in their advisories, they had lessons and little mini lessons on this is where you go into teams, this is where you need to find this is where you'll need to find that. So a variety of different topics that they had that they went over. They also had a scavenger hunt within the building and online for the students as well, for important places, important people, a whole just different variety where can you find extracurricular activities posted, if they're going to be up, where can you find the announcements, where might they be? And so they had to go and take pictures. They had to find an administrator, principal or assistant principal, take a picture there. Who's the nurse? Where can you find the nurse's office? So just a variety of things in those afternoons, as well as academic pieces too. So that was over the 2 days in the afternoon, later afternoon. So something that we knew that was going to be important for the students. One of the things that our faculty said that they particularly enjoyed is the fact that they really got to know their advisory students, because usually that's a very quick 8 to 10 minutes, every few weeks. And this really gave them that solid hour and a half to be with these students, and for these students to really get to know them as well. So that's just one of the pieces that we put into place. We also did a modified link crew as well with our students, because again, we were coming back just, again, with masks on and all of that, so that orientation was able to continue as well. So we'll change up next year a little bit, because of course, the first time you do anything, you learn and you grow from it, you get the feedback from the students. So we were very excited about that particular program. And again, we'll continue on with it. Anybody else? Eric? Elementary?
I just wanted to thank you for telling us that. So I also, again, I appreciate it because we are dealing with coming out of something that was terribly unique in the whole pandemic. And as I suspected, I think what we expect is, and I as a school committee member, expects that our educators and our leaders are going to be on their game, reacting to and adjusting to what we do each and every day. And so to hear that this was done and that you've taken action already in September from those survey results and now where we sit here today, I think is important for people to hear.
The planning
That's-
and that development took place over the summer. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a real passion for it, knowing going forward on it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So thinking about our 5th and 6th graders and just thinking about what a big transition it really is to middle school and the pieces that weren't quite in place even for our current 6th graders last year, thinking about even, we didn't use lockers last year. And so they've never used lockers and needed that extra time at the beginning of the year to be taught how to open them, the time to practice with them. We did have our web program in place for our 5th graders. We had it last year, although it's been a little bit more elaborate this year with more opportunities for that social interaction. Our 8th grade web leaders are mentoring the current 5th grade students, and they're meeting with them frequently. They've already met a couple of times through September, just doing some small group lessons led by the 8th graders and being middle school experts as they are right now, teaching the 5th graders how to be successful middle schoolers. And our 6th graders just started their house challenge, which we're so excited we're able to bring back again this year. But it's a character development, team building program for our 6th graders where they work within their houses.
They participate in different team building challenges. And as a grade level, we were really excited to send them on a field trip, which was the first time we were able to do something like that in a while as well. So excited to bring some things back, but definitely working on that social interaction, community building with the students, and just helping them adjust to middle school. One last thing, our open house as well, we changed the format for a little bit this year for 5th and 6th grades. We invited the students to bring their parents in for the evening to show their parents around school, introduce them to their teachers, and giving their families the opportunity to see what school is like through their children's lens. So, it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that again, too. And I'll get off my soapbox on this, which is that I appreciate those efforts. I'm also very aware in how schools function, my personal professional experience, that these instances and actions taken but to prepare students and give them stability and strength to come to school each and every day and to begin the school year greatly impacts their skills and their strength in the curriculum as well. So I don't think anyone listening to this should take it for granted that these activities and these organizational things that are put together are not for the sole purpose of climate, environment, but also achievement, because it does benefit our kids. So thank you for doing that.
Nice.
Okay, so we'll move on to the faculty.
Please.
Part of this. So again, the management of COVID, to have 92% of our faculty and staff and how we handled the pandemic last year, when we think back to the amount of work that took place over the summer to be able to prepare for that, and all of the subgroups and all of the meetings that we had with our Foxborough Education Association, there was a lot, and there was a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the year before starting in all aspects, from safety to academics to balancing their own children at home for teachers who have their own children at home, and knowing that they could be on a different schedule, and particularly where we had teachers with their own students in multiple schools and having a different schedule for elementary than we did for secondary. There were just so many variables. So in the end, to have 92% of our faculty and staff to rate that that they strongly agreed or excellent or good with how we handled that, we really took that to heart. That was really important for us to see that, and we saw a lot of that in the verbatim reports with their comments as well, because we were in a very different place last summer and throughout the school year, and constantly having to pivot based on what changed throughout the year, and their flexibility and, quite honestly, their resilience and hard work to be able to get through last year. And it's not as easy this year. I'll just take a moment to make a note on that as well. Students have not had an uninterrupted school year for a while now. I mean, Dr. Mello was showing something to us the other day that if you're kindergarten, first grade, or second grade, you've not had a normal school year. If you're a 7th grader, you've not had a normal school year since you were in the 4th grade. If you're a junior in high school, you've not had a normal school year since you were an 8th grader. So if you think about that and having to be back in 5 days a week in the structure of school, that's hard for students, and it's hard for our faculty and staff as well to be able to get back in that. September can be hard in any year, but to come back after what we've been experiencing, that is particularly challenging, draining, all of that for students and faculty. I see it in my own children and seeing being extra tired because they've just not had that. Same with faculty and staff. So we were very pleased to see this high percent, but at the same time, we're very realistic in knowing that we're not out of this yet, and it's still a lot of really hard work on the part of faculty and staff, students and families as well. So when we look at the academic preparation and the comparison over time with our faculty, we've talked about some of the really small but little dips that we've seen in the last 3 administrations of this, and thinking about the reflection from a teaching and learning standpoint, where we've reinvented education. We've hypothesized many reasons that we see that or feel that or have heard that from staff. I don't know if you want to expand a little bit on that.
Well, I think there's one. Students in the school are learning what they need to know to be successful in the next grade or after graduation. We heard a lot of concerns from teachers last year that the learning was interrupted and it was unfinished. So I wasn't surprised to see that change. And it actually affirmed why we had such a big team wanting to come forward this summer and work on our MTSS work that we did to prepare for some acceleration work that we're doing this year. So that to me says we have reflective educators who really want to ensure that kids are ready for the next grade level. And they were like, how can we dig into this work to make sure that we make up for any unfinished learning as we start the year?
This particular slide here, when we're looking at school leadership and administrators providing helpful and useful feedback about instructional practices, this caused us pause to really think about, we're providing feedback on something we've never done before, and the teaching practices and how that looks so differently. So when we see those dips in that area, again, a much different school year, much harder than it has been, and it's going to obviously vary by level too. So this is district-wide, but it's really created some good conversation, and will continue to as we look at what teaching and learning has looked like, the things that we're taking forward with us. The parent engagement, wanted to stop here on this slide. So when we look at the comparisons over the years, pretty consistent to the last administration, but the one that we looked at here, that's the lower agreement, is the parent input is used to improve instruction. So you see an increase there. So we've thought about, the number of surveys that went out, the town halls that took place, there were different mechanisms for feedback in order to find out what's working, what's not. So although you see that it's a lower level of agreement, it's an increase in thinking about, again, the unique year that we have lived through during last year. Social emotional learning, we had a couple of new questions here based on what we had mentioned before with parents. We see this with peers. 96% of our students that they have, a strong agreement here as far as being with their peers in class, but you see that it is different when it comes to virtually. And so our faculty saw that, like I was saying before, when you think about the video calls and such. School operations, very consistent over the years. We do see some increases here in when we go to maintaining our buildings and the cleanliness, and there were a lot of shout outs to our custodians and our maintenance crews for all of the extra work that they have done last year and are continuing this year, and many in the open comment sections just really calling that out, and then you see that reflected here as well. As far as providing all of the necessary updates to health and safety measures, that was a new question, and 94% agreement there. We felt that, all that we were doing, it was being received, and saw that as really positive. So faculty and staff, when we look at the highest ranking indicators that are here, it really goes back to student support and social emotional learning, which we think is obviously so important to know that those supports are there and their perceptions. And then the lowest ranking indicators, when we look at that, some of this is really out of our control from what we had from whether it was mandates, protocols, guidelines, or just not being able to meet together as we have in the past because of those protocols that were in place. So we'll pause there with faculty and staff and see if there's any reflections on your part after digesting all of that information, or any questions.
I'd just like to say that regarding some of the low points, there were just not enough hours in the day. There was times that I would hear my daughter on a Zoom with a teacher that had 25 other students, you know, where the teacher would be on a Zoom call helping her with problems and things like that. There really was no off switch. It seemed last year, from my my perception as a parent, the faculty just in Foxborough seemed to go above and beyond, but there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many hours you can expect teachers to work. So I do feel that you're right. They were limited, but I thought that they did a really great job with the applications that you gave them, with using Zoom, with using Teams, with really trying to come up with a lot of different ways to reach out to students and connect with them and get their work done. But I'm not surprised that, you know, other things sort of fell by the wayside, like teacher meetings and, you know, administration meetings with the faculty. It's just where we're at, but everything looks great, and I do appreciate everything that teachers have done, so thank you all.
Anyone else?
Not at this
We can
time.
move on.
I mean, I think it's.
Thank you, sir.
As far as this,
Right there. Shelley, do you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, not at this time. I think it's all very self-explanatory and so thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, let's move on to.
as far as the student section, what we thought we'd just ask if there's any particular slides here that you would want to ask questions about instead of going through these different ones, thinking about the grades, so it's 5th grade through 11th grade.
I was just gonna say, I found it interesting, and just looking at kind of the questions that had to do with the alcohol, the vaping, the drug use. I always, whenever you read them, you always have to kind of stop, look back at it, because it's saying this is not a problem. You agree it's not a problem.
Right.
And seeing the perception between, it's the same question between parents, faculty, and students, and kind of seeing the discrepancy between that. And I'm always intrigued to see, has the administration looked at that and really tried to figure out where discrepancy, why there is a discrepancy? And the reason I'm just looking at that is just looking at, some of them, there's not much vaping between the parents of 54%, the faculty 65, and the students of 62. That seems to kind of align itself there. But like alcohol, parents having kind of them being at 66%, while the faculty and the students are higher at 81 and 79%, which is always, we have to look at the opposite, saying that there's 34% of parents saying alcohol is a potential problem, when faculty and students are saying that it's much less of one. So I always kind of, looking at this is people's perspective, but kind of where's the disconnect? Why are parents thinking that it's more of a problem than faculty and students? Somewhat same with the drug use question. And what do you as administrators do with this type of information from the survey? It's a survey, it's a perception. But how do you utilize this kind of information?
Well, I think one of the things that you said, which is really important, is to remember that it's perception based on those that answered the survey. So those that are actually physically in the school building and know what is going on is going to be different than those that are just hearing it from maybe their students. So there's a difference that's there. The administration, as far as looking at what's really taking place, that's a conversation that we have at the high school level. Diana, I might ask you to come back up to the table just to share a little bit. As an example, last year, anytime a student has to go to the bathroom, they're scanning a QR code, so we know who's going to the bathroom. We have cameras in hallways, so if there's something that happens, and students report on other students too, at times. And so then that provides information that's valuable. But at the same time, it is a challenge. I'll let you add.
It's a question that we always have, particularly the drugs and the alcohol, because truly in the building, our rates are extremely low. And at events, zero. You know, we just had a homecoming dance with 400 and some odd students. Am I naive to say that every single student was perfectly fine and sober? I would love to say absolutely yes, but there are so many things that can be consumed that you have absolutely no idea on. But we also talk about what's the perception and what are the real norms. Because oftentimes the kids will say, I don't, but I'm saying yes that others are. But is that just a thought? And we're wanting to turn that around. No, you're not the only person who isn't drinking. You're not the only person who isn't doing drugs. So is it a perception or are they really seeing it? The vaping's a whole other ballgame because for the vaping, I mean, you can hide vapes anywhere. They can be anywhere and it's a quick hit and it's away. You can't even detect smells anymore when it comes to vapes. They used to be, you know, with the cherry smells and all the fruity smells and you could smell those types of things. Now you don't even smell them. So again, we take that very much to heart. We were also with limiting, and we still are, the number of students in bathrooms. We've had students that have come out and said, head in. We've got people right outside the bathrooms so that they can go in. But again, if you don't see anything, smell anything, it's a very difficult process to try to find and locate. The best that we can do is educate. We've really heard from students, I think the opposite, and that since the kids were out, there's been less vaping. It's expensive. And if you don't have a supplier that maybe you're buying from at school or making arrangements from in your neighborhood or whatever it might wind up being, you don't have access to it. So, yes, we always have questions to it. I truly don't know what the right answer is. Again, I can only go on just the stats of what we have in school, and our rates are very, very low. We're very fortunate in that way. So, again, is it the reality? We don't have kids that are coming drunk to school. We're not finding nips in bathrooms. You know, we don't have those types of things that are necessarily going on. But it's always a worry that we always have with our students. I don't know that I've really answered your questions, but.
No, I think in one sense, yes. And as you were talking, I was sort of thinking is that maybe there's a way to gather more information is making it almost each of them two questions, is because you're asking during the school day.
Right.
Okay. And, you know, is alcohol a problem? Alcohol is not a problem in the school during the school day. But is it a problem after school? You know, and that makes it kind of hard, I think, especially from a parental standpoint, if you're hearing things, that there isn't really a way to answer the question to say, yes, you know, yes, I think it might be a problem, maybe not during the actual hours of school, but maybe before or after or different. And if we're trying to gather information, then it might be a good idea to kind of split those each up. Because I'm wondering whether students would answer the question differently. If you're saying, okay, during the school day, yeah, no, there's not a problem, but after school, around school property, extracurricular events or just school events that might not be on school grounds, but just to kind of get that idea, to get that information.
Those have been some of the questions, truthfully, that we have wrestled with, and wording. It's something that we've discussed various years. How can we change the question up a bit so that it gets more to the heart of it? And
Right.
so certainly to do another look would certainly be a help.
Because I wonder if that's some of the discrepancy from a parent's perspective versus, you know, a faculty's perspective. They can only comment on what they're seeing during the school day itself. But it's something that I was just kind of looking at. So, and how else do you kind of, at what numbers would that start to be a concern from a school's perspective if you started seeing different numbers from parents, from students?
I think it's always a concern that we have. You know, we worry so much even now about the social emotional places that our kids are at and what are they doing to to get through the day. You know, is it,
Right.
how do you self-medicate? You know, and what are you using to self-medicate? Are you meditating? Or, you know, is it something else that's happening? You know, we know marijuana is legalized now, so there's a lot in the homes, and there are a lot of kids engaging in that as well, but we don't have kids that are necessarily coming in and smelling of pot anymore. But you've got other gummies and other ways of ingesting, and, you know, many people believe it and use it as a medical, or as a medicine. So I'm not going to judge on that end of it, but I think, I don't know a number that we would, if it was, you know, 100% of people are saying, oh my goodness, yes, we'd be saying, what are we doing? There's got to be something that's going on at 70%, at 80%, at 60%, at 50%. 30% I don't want to see either. But how do we drill down? You know, and we do have, with our sophomores in the past, we've had our program with our nurses where the kids are all screened and they're able to have a conversation with a nurse to say, yes, I'm having difficulty, no judgment. You know, there's no consequence as a result. It's more about getting help for kids, and that's really what that's all about. So, again, hoping that students would feel that they have a trusted adult that they could go to if there's an issue or a problem. And again, I can only go by the daily activities of our students and what is happening or what is not happening on a daily basis in the building, as well as at extracurricular events that are happening.
And some of the parental learning opportunities, looking for the signs that we've had before were really outstanding. I forget who puts that on, but that was really great, looking for within the home so that you would have some signals for that. And just to speak to what you were talking about, I think part of our role as educators is to give students strategies to regulate themselves that are accessible at all times and that are not substances. So seeing changes like at the high school where phys ed, you can opt into yoga, doing things like self-regulation and meditation and breathing and things like that have become very normalized parts of our school day for students of all ages.
Brain breaks
having,
during the day.
Yeah,
even.
brain breaks, sensory stations and regulation stations, and teaching kids about how to regulate themselves internally has become much more normalized part of our daily operating procedure.
And also, too, I think having, especially through our health classes and all, too, it's those conversations about, you know, it's okay not to party. It's okay not to drink. And there's a lot of other students who are out there who are of the same mindset that you are. But again, is it the perception that this is what everybody does, even though I'm not the one who's doing it? So how do we change that perception that the majority are not, and it's okay not to?
So are you doing that sophomore program this year? Okay.
Should be in place with the nurse later on this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, and this is just something I like to bring up every year. Two questions that are kind of challenging and elusive for working with adolescents. Staff members are responsive when students report bullying and then the other question on students feeling as though they have a trusted adult who they can talk to about a personal problem. In all surveys throughout the years and also across schools, you see parents and faculty reporting higher than kids, and that therein lies the challenge in working with adolescents, and just continue to encourage principals, building leaders to work with your guidance counselors to continue to move that number and move that needle, because it's always sad to see the number, but I'm used to seeing the number. So if anybody has anything that they are working on that you'd like to address, otherwise we can chat when you do your school improvement plans. So.
I don't know if any of our elementary principals want to mention like some of the work that's done as far as language and the difference between conflict and bullying and how that is different, and being able to have students understand what the difference is. I can tell you a personal example of being in one of the elementary schools a week ago. A student was walking in line, elementary student obviously, and their foot went and kicked the person in front of them. And what came out of that student's mouth was that this individual bullied them because they kicked them. So then I happened to be in the classroom right afterwards, and the guidance counselor was in the classroom explaining, well, what happened? and what bullying is and what it is not.
Right.
So much of it too is really about education and understanding what conflict is and what bullying is and is not. And sometimes those are conversations that we have with families as well, and that understanding the definition of bullying is different than conflict. I don't know if there's any principals that want to add anything else.
It's an important point, Amy.
I think one of the things that we all pay attention to is.
Yeah, no, there's one there.
Sorry.
Yeah, just point up the microphone.
Is that the kids are treating each other and the adults respectfully. So I think that common thread is through all of our buildings about not only being kind and courteous to one another as they go through their day, but the adults. I think sometimes kids, when they're young, worry that they're going to be bad. We teach, there are no bad kids. You may make a poor choice. We'll learn what to do differently next time and move forward. But I think that common expectations for the kids to know this is what we, and it's okay if we don't make that expectation, but what we do. So I do think that that common language for kids as they're learning, like Dr. Berto said, is really important on what bullying is, what bullying isn't, what kind and courteous is, and what it isn't. Because kids want to do the right thing. Often it's our job to teach them along with the academics on what the right thing is to do as a human being. So I think we're all spending a lot of time this year about teaching our kids on what it means to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
I don't know if there were any other slides on any of the comparisons that caught your interest or raised a question for you.
I had one that is more, we had chatted with the parent response in terms of transitions, elementary to middle, middle to high. And I'm not overly surprised by the numbers. That makes sense. And I appreciate you speaking to the mitigation efforts that you've put into place this year. I guess what I'm leaning on is that I think for many of our kids, it was actually this year's transition, the one we haven't surveyed yet, that has been the harder.
Yeah.
Because we all know, and we've talked about, that as hard as last year was on different kids, for different reasons, going back this year to having similar academic standards and teacher standards and work levels, which were at pre-pandemic levels, and were by design, and I believe rightly, lowered during the last year's learning model, means that a lot of kids coming back this year felt shell-shocked a little bit. Like, whoa, okay, I haven't worked this hard, for as hard as last year was for some kids. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts throughout this year, and maybe you've already seen some of that, and I know that some of you spoke to that in terms of dealing with the transitions to school this year, but I'm very curious to see those numbers next year as well. So.
Bless you.
Oh, and sorry. I just want to say thank you to the principals for doing this survey, similar to what I said about the MCAS. Sometimes getting the data can be scary, and I can imagine sitting in your chair that you might feel a little bit nervous putting this survey out, but glad you did. I'm really glad that the district stuck with it and kept getting the same data that you've been getting year after year, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, nothing else? Moving forward to relooking at policy EEA, transportation. We heard from community members earlier tonight in open public comment. This is on the agenda. I'd asked that have been put on, and I'll just keep it very general, but to be specific, I'm asking if the policy I was going to ask if the policy subcommittee would want to revisit that policy, in particular around what our duty of care is around getting kids to school from where, and knowing that everything has management implications, financial implications, safety implications. I was wanting to ask the policy subcommittee if we all agree, to relook at that policy, because we actually, normally we don't turn policies around that fast, but we had looked at this within the last year. So I just wanted people's take on that.
I would like to get a chance to maybe reinterpret and take a look at this policy to include all families and all children within the community.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I agree. I think that we need to look at it again. I, looked it over just quickly and noticed there's probably some other updates that are needed.
Okay.
Besides what was brought to our attention. But yeah, I think that we should put it on for further discussion at next time frame.
Okay, thank you. And then with that, Mr. Pearson.
I would
sorry,
agree too.
please.
So I sat on the policy committee with you when we looked at the first time.
Yes,
I
we did.
absolutely agree it should be looked at. I appreciate the public comment today. I do particularly agree that if someone establishes clear legal residence in the community, I think that needs to be addressed and discussed. So I think it should be looked at swiftly if possible, and ask the policy committee to get together as fast as you can.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, so with that, I guess we'll refer this to the policy subcommittee and open that back up, which I don't believe we need to vote on. Okay, by
you do.
consensus. All right, so thank you folks for doing that, and
So do we make our meeting here in public?
yeah, I think
Public meeting?
you all can, policy subcommittee can meet as they ordinarily do. It's a posted meeting, and take a look at it, and usually we take input from administration and on other implications, look at other policies and so on and so forth, just as we would with any of the other ones.
Great.
I would just add to that you have unanimous support, it sounds like, from the four of us in discussing it today, so that should give some energy to the policy subcommittee to act accordingly,
Fine.
probably faster than slower.
Okay,
Correct.
well, thank you. So, moving on from there, I'll move to other matters. Any other matters people would like to put out there tonight?
I have some other matters.
Ms. Ladani?
Yes. So first, the pumpkin event at the Frog Pond behind the IGO. This is
Yeah.
regarding the rec event. It is October 30th. It is a free event for all, and everything is full speed ahead. We did reach out as a rec board to the PTOs at all the elementary schools, but I'm glad I actually have all the principals here. We do have someone willing to donate pumpkins to each classroom, and we have plenty of room to float them. If any of the principals would like to come forth with a number of classrooms and pumpkins that they'd like, please provide that to either myself or the rec department, and we will go ahead and get that count, get those pumpkins out that week. Each pumpkin can be carved through a classroom, and it'll be floated the night of the event, and they'll be lit with glow sticks. So it's really cute event,
Nice.
fun thing. So if anybody would like to reach out, I know it gets trickier the older you get, but if, National Honor Society or Student Council or anything like that is interested, please feel free to reach out. We'll provide the pumpkins. They're being provided. And the second matter is really more towards the board. The MIIA classes have been going really well. I just want to let you all know that there are opportunities there. And Barbara Kelly is a wonderful contact. I've actually really enjoyed the classes and the seminars and the webinars. As my own editorial, I've gained a lot from them, so
Sure.
they are wonderful. Barbara's really amazing to work with, so if anybody's interested, the opportunities are there. But I'm happy, I'm full speed ahead. She's got me on the schedule, so I'm doing that. So
Thank you
those
for-
are my matters.
Sarah, thank you for
Thank
doing
you,
that, and
Sarah.
also thank you for your work with the rec.
No
It's-
problem.
It's wonderful, so thank you for
fun.
representing us on there. Any other matters? Yes, Mr. Pearson?
I just wanted to echo something you said earlier in the meeting,
Yeah.
and to thank the people for attending the meeting. I wholeheartedly agree that this is how we take stands in our governance, and this is what we do in this community. I'll say for myself, and speaking for myself only, I don't look down on any member of the community and their opinions that might be different than mine. That's the way we exist. But I will say that my opinion is based upon living in the town for 47 years. My wife is a high school teacher. My daughter's an 8th grade math teacher. And my youngest daughter is a social and emotional specialist adjustment counselor in a high school. And then in my regular job, I spend a lot of time with a lot of schools around the state. Tomorrow, I'll be with 60 school leaders from Western Massachusetts, including the Berkshires and Springfield. So I will bring for this town, for this community and this school committee, my expertise, my experience, and my exposure to what I'm exposed to in life. But absolutely, I respect all the opinions of the people that come here, even if I might differ. But I will bring that to bear when I sit here and act in the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say, I think that when we had revised the mass policy the last time, I said
Yes.
we should be reviewing it periodically,
Yes.
monthly.
Yes.
So I think it should be on the schedule for next time. That would
Okay.
be my recommendation, as well as that since we're meeting for the policy, we're already going to be meeting between now and next time, that we should be reviewing it as well, in light of things that are happening and so forth. So I'd like to put that forward.
I agree. I think that's a great point.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my only other matter. No, that was
You're
good.
welcome.
No, and it was getting to be about that time, so we need to take a look at that. And Mr. Pearson, I appreciate everything you said too. And yeah, I can't emphasize that enough, that respect and civil discourse and participating in the process is so important, especially if we disagree, or especially if we see things differently, because how else do we reach understanding? Because I don't live in the world you do, and you don't live in the world that I do, any of you. And so I really, truly appreciate it. And so please do keep the information coming, and I'll reiterate again, read everything you send me. So, any other matters? Please, Ms. Dr. Barros.
We have a donation that came
yes,
in
I'm
after the, it just came in, and as many of you know, Kristen Morius, who is, dear to so many in this community, and her husband is one of our special education teachers at the high school, Steve. This donation is in her name, and it's to the special education department, and it is from Susan Grundy. So it is with heartfelt thanks. And obviously, we're continuing to keep all of the Warriors in our, thoughts, as this time is so difficult and just so heartbreaking.
So do we need to vote to accept
Yes.
it?
Yes, please.
So I'll
I
entertain a
move to accept the donation.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, accepted with gratitude. Thank you so much. Any other matters? Okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? 4-0.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
for bearing with me.
principals. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
principals.
Michael, for
Thank you.
coming out this
Thank you all.
evening.
Thank you, community members.